If you've ever struggled with knowing exactly who you need to hire and when, then this video is for you. In today's video, I'm going to share how small businesses can create a workforce plan to make those decisions as easy as possible. So you'll never ever wonder who to hire, how you're going to hire them, where you're going to find these candidates, and exactly when you're going to hire them. Stay tuned. Now, the term workforce plan probably conjures up images of a manufacturing environment or a call center environment where you have to ensure that you have X number of people in the premises at any given point in time to meet production output requirements. However, I'm here to tell you that you too, as a service-based professional services small business company, can also use workforce planning to your benefit. Because effectively, a workforce plan is simply a plan for you to know exactly who you need to hire and what skills you need to achieve the business objectives that you've set for yourselves. And typically those business objectives could be anywhere from 12 months out, 6 months out, 12 months out, to even further 5-7 years out. Although in today's day and age, having a plan that goes out 5 years even is kind of, probably not going to serve you very well, because it's just too far. Things just change too rapidly in today's world. And what I've found working with small businesses, and particularly CEOs over the last many, many years, is that rarely do small businesses have a workforce plan. They don't go through the workforce planning exercise. However, with what I'm going to show you today in terms of how to actually create a workforce plan and what are some things that you need to think about, I think that you will be incorporating this in your annual strategy planning sessions as well. Now, before we jump into the video, I just want to make sure that you know that you have to subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more about this, specifically around building and nurturing a high-performance team for small businesses in the professional services industry. And just want to let you know, if you are new here, my name is Sadaf Sheikh, and every week I come back to you with awesome content on how to manage your people and leverage them and make the most and get the most out of them, so that you're getting a super return on investment on the money that you're spending on your salaries and all of the infrastructure that comes with hiring staff. Okay, so let's jump into it. So step number one, before you create any kind of plan for really anything, is to figure out what your vision is. Now, your vision, as I had mentioned, can span in, your next 6 months. Like, where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself 12 months from now, 18 months, 3 years, whatever? My suggestion is to, when you're starting out, keep it short. However, as you get more accustomed to putting a workforce plan together, you can actually stretch those out further out. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why you would want to do that a little bit later in the video. Once you have that vision in mind and you know exactly what amazing looks like in your business, it's time to sit back and think about the 3 key objectives that you need to achieve in order to fulfill that vision. Now, this is one mistake that I see a lot of small businesses make, is that they have like 5 different things that they have on the go, or 10 different things that they have on the go, and that leads to eventual burnout of the team. So my suggestion for any small business owner is to keep your core business objectives to maximum 3. If you can bring it down to 1, that would be perfect. But let's say that that's not possible. You want to bring it down to 3, that's fine too. But everything that you do in your business then for the duration of that period, whether it's a year or whatever it is, need to happen to achieve those business objectives. And so this is really a litmus test also for your project plan, so that if you find yourself asking, okay, well, what business objectives does this activity or this action or this project relate to? And if you're not able to answer that very clearly, then say goodbye to that project. And so when you're really clear on which are the 3 objectives that you need to fulfill, it becomes a lot easier to plan for who you need to hire. So once you've done that, then you have to look at, okay, for me, in order to meet these objectives, what skills do we need on the team and what competencies do we need on the team? Now, this is not an easy exercise, and a lot of business leaders struggle with this. So stick with it. It takes practice. It takes time. You're not going to get it right the first time round. You will go through a few iterations of this. So the process is that you try and figure out what skills you need to achieve those objectives. Then you look at what skills you currently have inside of your organization. Now, if you're a startup, then you don't have far to look. If you are a small business that's slightly higher perhaps, you have 10, 15 employees, you do have to go back and take a look at what are all the skills that your employees possess so that you can make an accurate assessment of where the gaps are. So remember, you've got what you need to achieve, what skills you need to achieve your goals, and then you've got your audit of the skills that you currently have inside of your company. So as you go through this internal audit of skills, there are a couple of things that you need to keep in mind outside of just simply going to people and asking them what they majored in college or what courses they've been on recently. One of the key things that you have to keep in mind is how is your internal workforce going to change over the next several months or years even. So think about things like who is slated for retirement. Who do you anticipate might be leaving the organization for another opportunity? Those could be either performers who are not up to snuff or super high performers who have reached their capacity for how much they can contribute in your company and are probably looking for more that you just can't offer them. By the way, I will add that if you do have employees like that who outgrow your organization, that's okay, because you never know when your paths might cross again. So don't begrudge them the opportunity to go and expand and fly away somewhere else and then potentially come back to you in a few years at a different role when you have a need for it. The other thing to keep in mind as you're doing a skills audit is also looking at your relative or actual turnover that happens year over year. So if you haven't been keeping track of who has been leaving your organization, which is commonly known as a turnover rate, then you do need to go back and look at some records perhaps. Hopefully you have them. Who have you hired over the last 5 years, and how many people have you hired, and how many people have left the organization? And just using a simple calculation, you just calculate what your turnover rate is and factor that turnover rate into your workforce plan, because you can't assume that everyone is going to stay in exactly the same spot. And so the skills audit that you're doing is not like a static thing. Yes, to some extent it's a point in time, but there are certain assumptions that you can make and factor in if you want to get an accurate assessment of who is actually going to be around. Maybe not who necessarily, but what skills are going to be around in the time that you're measuring for. So a year out or 18 months out or 2 years out. Okay, so far so good. If you have any comments or questions or anything like that, I hope I'm being clear in this video. It is slightly a bit more technical than I normally get into, but I thought that this would be useful for you to know. So if you have any questions, put them in the comment section below. If this is making sense and if you're getting value from it, put that in the comments below as well. Okay, so assuming that you've done everything that I've talked about in this video up until now, you kind of have a good idea of what the skills gaps actually are. So you know what skills you have, you've made a list of potentially people who might be leaving the organization, who you need to take into consideration when you're considering your skills gap, and also what your general employee turnover rate is. Now you have to look at how are you going to fill that skills gap. And there are two key sources of talent effectively. One is your internal talent, and the other talent pool that you can draw from is the external marketplace. So that's your traditional going out, posting a job, interviewing candidates and hiring somebody from the outside. But a lot of times business owners, specifically small business CEOs, will forget about that internal talent. So if you can plan for actually utilizing your internal talent for future roles that might come open, then that's definitely going to be cheaper and faster for you. So assuming you're looking at the external marketplace and that you don't really have anyone internally that you feel would be up for a promotion at any given point, or who you can actually ask to help with some of the stuff that you need to get done or some of the skills gaps to fill. So in the external marketplace, one of the things that you do need to be aware of is what does the employment look like in your industry? Now, I have a client, for example, in the insurance industry where literally the entire industry is at a 100% employment rate, which means that nobody really is looking for a job. If they are looking for a job, chances are they're going to find one extremely quickly. So it's a highly competitive marketplace for talent. So you have to go back to your industry and look at what is the employment rate in your industry. Are people getting laid off a lot? So this would have been happening, for example, in retail. And if those skills are transferable, there's a talent pool for you to be taking from. think broader than just your industry as well. The other thing, I'll give you another example. There was a time when I was in real estate several years ago, and the city of Calgary was going through a major building boom. So all of the big 3 or 4 commercial developers had at least one commercial office tower in the works where they were building the building. Now, the thing about real estate and commercial buildings is that you need a lot of people to keep those buildings working. So from heating and cooling and maintenance and cleaning and security and all of the stuff. And what we were seeing is that 2 years from now, when the buildings would all be built, there would be a huge push for talent, that like for people in the HVAC industry, for people in the maintenance industry who actually knew how to maintain buildings, people in the technology sector who were able to contribute to the smart building infrastructure that they were trying to put in. So we needed to plan. So, as part of one of the developers that had a building on the go, we needed to plan in advance on how we were going to take, our internal candidate, our pool of talent, and grow them in-house. One of the things that we ended up doing was partnering with a local college and bringing in super junior people straight out of the program, and then we would train them in-house. So that meant that 2 years out, instead of going out and trying to find an experienced HVAC person, we had already taken somebody from college and helped to train them and bring them up to speed on our processes and the way our buildings worked and our culture and all of that. That was a way more effective way of trying to source talent than going out into the marketplace at that point. However, we would not have been able to do that had we not been aware of what was happening in our industry, and we would not been aware of what our own needs were going to be 2 years out. So based on those examples, that should give you a pretty good idea of some of the risks and benefits associated with hiring internally and home growing your talent versus going out to the marketplace. Yes, when you go out to the marketplace, you basically it's like a faucet, right? You turn it on and out come a whole bunch of candidates. But that may not always be the case depending on the industry and the time that you are in the industry. So you have to use a little bit of judgment, and you have to use some of your experience in knowing whether relying on the external marketplace is better for you or relying on the internal marketplace, or like home growing your talent is better. One of the positives of getting someone from the outside is that, of course, you get a fresh perspective, right? So if it's a slightly more senior position, you get somebody from the outside to like really rejuvenate your business and take it into different directions. If you're adding product lines or service lines in your business, then getting somebody from the outside who has experience kicking off a program might be a good idea, because you don't know what you don't know. So if you have somebody promoted from within, they may not be able to really take that service to its fullest potential. So that's one reason for looking for external. But by and large, home growing your talent is the cheapest and easiest method of filling any future vacancies that you have in your company. Understanding that as a small business, that becomes a little bit harder, but when you have a workforce plan in place, it's actually considerably easier than you think. And that's it. That's how you create a workforce plan for your small business. Now, this is obviously a simplistic way of doing it. There are a bunch of other things that you can also factor in. You can make it as complex as you want. If you're just starting out with a workforce plan though, I suggest that you use the method that I described today just to get you started. And as time goes on, you can make it a little bit more robust. Now, if you want help with creating your workforce plan and doing that skills audit and figuring out whether you need to home grow or get talent from the outside, then I talk about all of that in much more detail in my High Performance Culture Academy program. And if you can apply for it using the link below, book a call with me. Let's see if it's the right fit for you. It is specifically for small business CEOs who are in the professional services space. And of course, if you like this video, please hit the like button below. I love to see those likes. Subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit the bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video, which right now happens to be every Tuesday. I am looking to increase the frequency a little bit more. And comment below and let me know if you like this video, if you want to hear more about stuff like this on how to make your hiring practices easier, then just put it in the comments and I read them, I lap them up, and I will respond to every single one. All right, my friends, that's it for today. Take a look at these other videos to continue your journey into building and nurturing your high performance team, specifically around recruiting and hiring the right talent. And I will see you same place, same time next week.